Amazon can make all the excuses that they want for Rings of Power, but the one thing that they can't say is that we didn't warn them, because we absolutely did. For months, we told people that what Amazon was about to do with Lord of the Rings of Power was going to desecrate Tolkien, that it would have nothing to do with Middle-earth, and at the end of the day, it would be a complete and total disaster. And that's exactly what it was. The most expensive show ever made. $1 billion for 2 seasons of this, and $700 million wrapped up in just the first season, 8 episodes. And at the end of the day, we know that it was a complete and total failure, not just with the fans, but now when we start to look at these numbers, when you have these numbers coming out for Amazon, the numbers that they didn't want out there in public, now we know what a disaster it is. And in fact, we now have the Nielsen ratings that show the Lord of the Rings of Power completely falls off Nielsen charts just 2 weeks after the season finale. This was something that needed to set records, and they were open about that. Amazon said that it needs to be a massive global phenomenon for us to be able to make our money back on our investment. And it has not been anything of the sort. Amazon was desperately looking for something that would stay relevant for the weeks and the months after it aired. Something that people would go back and watch because they loved it so much. But no, instead what they had was a massive woke disaster. A story that didn't pay attention to Tolkien, that didn't pay attention to lore, and did anything but that. They wanted to write their own story. Tolkien for the modern world. We need to race swap this character. We need to take this character that everybody loves and make them into something they never were. Take a beloved character like Galadriel, and instead of making her the character she was in the books from the canon itself, no, instead we need to make her a girl boss who's annoying as hell that everybody despises. All of these decisions Amazon was warned about, but they didn't listen. And now we have the data that proves how bad it was. The Lord of the Rings of Power completely fell off Nielsen's top 10 charts just 2 weeks after the show's season finale premiered. The 8th and final episode of Rings of Power Alloyed released on October 14th. And you can see there it was, barely cracking the 1,000 million minutes watched. That's how they do it in terms of millions of minutes watched. And it didn't even get to the top. This season finale, it didn't even get back to the levels we saw in the premiere. Because quite frankly, as it went along, people lost interest. That's what we saw with Rings of Power. People didn't want to tune in again. People didn't want to rewatch it. People fell off. They lost nearly 40% of their audience that tuned in to the first couple episodes. That is pathetic for Rings of Power. And then in the next week, we saw it fall off the top 10 altogether. You had to go to original just to see where it was because it fell all the way down to 570 million minutes watched. And then just 1 week later, it's completely absent. You can't find it anywhere. It was not that phenomenon that they needed. It was not that thing that they were investing in that would stay relevant week after week after week. Because this was not Lord of the Rings. This was not Tolkien. This was a pet project by people who wanted to make Lord of the Rings into where their worldview is coming from. They wanted to put their stamp on it. And it's a complete and total failure. And we did have these reports come out, a couple weeks after the finale that said, you know what, the fact that they're not saying anything kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it? Amazon was very quick to say, we had this many people tune into the premiere. We're approaching this many number of people watching it, but they haven't said anything. They have been radio silent since Rings of Power went off the air because they know it's a disaster. They can't spin it. A Business Insider report back in August from before the first episode said Amazon would sound the trumpets of victory after the show, regardless of actual viewership. And people even said inside the studio that if we can't make this work, what purpose is there for Amazon Studios even to exist? And now you have reports like this a little bit after the fact. Amazon's silence on the Rings of Power audience size is deafening. Rings of Power is in theory among Amazon Prime's most watched original series ever. So why is the tech giant being so cagey about its viewership? Well, we know the reason. It's because they lied to everybody initially, and now that the real data is coming out, the real data showing that this is not the massive hit that they needed it to be, that it's a massive disappointment, well, now they want to hope people forget about that failure as quickly as they can. The fans hated this. They didn't show up to watch it. They didn't stay around to watch it. And at the end of the day, the Rings of Power was a colossal failure, just like we said it would be. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.